Philadelphia, San Jose, or DC, Los Angeles Galaxy.
Pitch Pass.
Colorado Rapids, Vancouver Whitecaps, Seattle Sounders, Montreal Impact, USA, New York Red Bulls.
Pitch Pass, your all-access credential to the people that matter in MLS. Here's your host, Greg Roach.
Well, what a week it has been. Thank you very much for choosing Pitch Pass to be one of the many podcasts. I know you like all the soccer podcasts, but thank you for choosing Pitch Pass to be one of those. Now, if you could tell your friends that you choose Pitch Pass to be one of your MLS or soccer podcasts, that'd be even better. At Pitch Pass, follow us on Twitter. PitchPass.com is the place to start for anything related to the show, including how to subscribe and where you want to subscribe. And if you end up subscribing through iTunes, no pressure there. But if you decide to do that, make sure you leave a comment, or at the very, very least, rate the show. It's been crazy with CONCACAF, with the upcoming MLS weekend slate of action, so we will talk playoffs and CONCACAF. A little bit later on, Jay DeMerit of Vancouver Whitecaps will talk to us about their interesting situation as they make a push, a final thrust to get into the playoffs. I know I painted a vivid picture there. I apologize. But first, ESPN analyst Taylor Twellman breaks down everything with us. Taylor, welcome to the program. Although I do feel a little bad. Am I pulling you away as we're recording? It is Cardinals-Dodgers on TV.
Oh, thanks, Greg.
How down are you on Brian Wilson's facial hair and his accompanying mohawk ponytail?
Oh, but I mean, listen, I get it. You know, Brian Wilson, you're awesome. I love it. So cool. Like, you don't understand, though, Greg. Like, the problem for Cardinal fans like us is 3-1 leads in series haven't been very friendly to us.
No.
So a lot of us are sitting on, both our hands or even biting our fingernails. We're so nervous here.
Yeah, but you got to feel like whatever happens here, you've got your championships the last few years. You've done well.
Oh, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I mean, when you really think about it, like the amount of money the New York Yankees have spent in their lifetime and the amount of money St. Louis Cardinals have, and Cardinals are second in World Series.
Totally.
Cool.
Totally. And you know what? Let's gear ourselves a little towards soccer as well. These cities that don't have the four major sports seem to be the cities that have really latched on to the MLS teams when they have come into existence, which is another reason why St. Louis will be a perfect expansion spot. I know you agree.
Oh, it's not even a question. It's funny you brought this up because I was in Portland last weekend for Portland-Seattle, and I said to, my main man, Mark Connolly, that always travels with us and does great work with us behind the scenes at ESPN, and I said to Mark, we may be, honestly, in the only American city that doesn't care about Sunday football.
Yeah.
I mean, the opening story on local news was not Oregon-Washington. It was Portland-Seattle. That says enough. St. Louis, listen, with the Cardinals, with the Blues, and whatever you say about the Rams, soccer would be the second sport there. They would overtake the St. Louis Blues if they had a soccer-specific stadium. It's not even a question.
My fingers are crossed for that city. But before we get back into MLS stuff, we had set this up before last night, but, just to touch on a little bit, the insanity of last night. Have you ever been, as a viewer, a part of a situation where it was just so much edge-of-your-seat stuff between multiple games in your entire soccer viewing life?
No, but you just said the key, though, is soccer viewing. And I actually just said this on SportsCenter this morning. For the American that watches all sports, it's very similar to the first Thursday, Friday at the NCAA tournament. Because, Greg, think about it. Like what we saw last night in World Cup qualifying in CONCACAF, it's very similar to like a 16 seed taking a number 1 seed to like 30 seconds left in the game. To think about Panama going to the World Cup over Mexico.
Yeah.
I mean, the concept of that. So, but in soccer, no, I've never seen it. I've been on the edge of my seat, and it was the women's game, U.S.-Brazil. That was big. I was on the edge of my seat for that. You've been on the edge of your seat a couple moments, but not multiple games like that. Never before in my life.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you're going to be the one to kind of ground me a little bit and try to go away from euphemisms, but what do you say to the person who would go, well, this is the night that CONCACAF really put themselves on the global map as far as soccer is concerned? Weren't they already there?
I think it shows I don't believe that CONCACAF should have 3.5, Greg. You're asking the wrong guy. I think it's too much. I think 3 teams is enough out of our World Cup qualifying cycle. When you look at what happens in Africa, you look at some of the teams that are not going out of Europe, I think 3.5 are too much. I think that half is too much out of CONCACAF. But in saying that, I think it just goes to show you that anything happens in CONCACAF. It's amazing. I've never seen anything like it. And for the couple of the foreign-based analysts that we have at ESPN FC, they finally realized it. And so to that point, yeah, maybe it's on the map for those people. But it's CONCACAF. I laugh because haven't we seen crazy crap happen all the time in CONCACAF? I feel like I have.
You know, and I'm glad that you are the guy to bring us all out of the clouds and kind of ground us. You're absolutely right about Africa. You know, and it's interesting to hear someone, a North American, an American, say that 3.5 is too many. Because you look at what Mexico has done throughout qualifying, it's been abysmal, and yet they're still on the cusp of making a World Cup. It plays right into your argument.
Yeah, and then it also reminds the Panamanians that, listen, you could be upset at the United States, continue to play in the game, but in 3 games in final round of qualifying, you gave up points past the 85th minute. Not us, not Mexico, not Jamaica, not Honduras. You gave it up yourself. So while it was disappointing and you see the reactions of Panama, they only have themselves to blame because in 3 of the final 10 games of this World Cup qualifying cycle for 2014, they gave up points after the 85th minute. And I don't know what's going on in Mexico. I mean, you're calling in Rafa Marquez, for God's sake.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but, like, that game last night against Costa Rica, it almost looked like when you're playing for your club team as a pro. And I remember Steve Nicol would hop into training, and you're like, Stevie, your career is over. Get out of the training. Rafa looked out of place last night. Should have got a red card. Completely lost Saborio, and I don't know who stole Chicharito's jersey and put it on, but that's not the same Javier Hernandez that we all know.
Now, I'll argue the other side of the coin, which is, you know, we all went in thinking to ourselves, well, there's no way the U.S. isn't going to qualify. There's no way. Everybody, don't worry about the first few results. There's plenty of time. They'll be at the World Cup, where then you can look at Mexico and go, well, it's not a slam dunk that just because you're U.S. or just because you're Mexico that you're going to World Cup in CONCACAF. So, you know, could the compromise, and it's not a compromise moving forward, is maybe they don't deserve 3.5 spots today, but by the next cycle, the other teams that are just a tier below the U.S. and Mexico will be up enough that 3.5 will be deserved for CONCACAF?
I think if Honduras continues their growth, then yes, I really do believe that. I think if Panama continues to fight for the 4th and 3rd spot, yeah, I agree. Honduras has to continue their growth, and MLS has actually played a huge part of that growth. So, yeah, I can see that argument 100%, but history has shown us really there's, 2.5, 3 teams. It's usually the quality that's coming out. And to your point, Greg, a reminder needs to be set out. Last August, we're in Azteca Stadium, and we're sitting there and talking about the gap between Mexico and the United States. Mexico celebrating a gold medal in the Olympic Games, the favorite at CONCACAF. A lot can change. Mexico qualifies for the World Cup by beating New Zealand and moving on. Who knows what they do in Brazil? And then we're all looking at this saying,
yeah,
see, you know what I mean? So there's still so much time to be left, and they have the talent. They just don't look like none of them are on the same page.
All right, so 2 questions in one, which you can probably answer in one answer, and that is, so is it now time for us as Americans to remove fully the chip on our shoulder about getting respect from Mexico, and then vice versa, is it time for Mexico, be it their media, be it their players, be it their fan base, to stop with the condescending, you're our little brother in soccer attitude that they have towards the United States?
I felt like the chip came off that shoulder personally in 2002 World Cup when we beat them. I feel like that's when the chip should have came off the shoulder. And if, the Mexican fan base, if the Mexican national team, if the Mexican Federation still wants to look at us as the younger brother, go ahead. I dare you. Because honestly, you're too late. And I think, I don't know if I necessarily believe that. Is it part of the rivalry amongst fans? Greg, of course, there's always going to be the Babe Ruth scenario hanging over the Red Sox and the Yankees. But I in my heart of hearts, I doubt the Mexican Federation looks at the United States that they're, we're their younger brother still. I doubt that.
And I agree. And I think really that's the revelation I came to today when I thought to myself, well, did I want the U.S. to win last night or did I want them to lose so that Mexico could be out? I'm thinking to myself at that point, it's time to put aside what we want to be thought of by the Mexicans. We need to get over the little brother syndrome. We need to realize that it doesn't matter what they think of what we do and how we play our soccer.
Yeah, and I've been criticized over the last 2 months of saying I want Mexico in the World Cup. I do. And that's not to say that when they whistle the national anthem when I played against them and all that stuff, my job's to give to give my opinion, but also to be understanding, and I'm lacking the right word, subjective about it. And honestly, the United States needs their number one rival in the World Cup. I don't care what anyone tries to convince me. Do you secretly want to see Mexico fail? Of course, but for our sport to grow, and who knows what's down the road with the Liga MX and MLS, who knows? I'm sorry. I think I want Mexico in the World Cup because it makes the United States better.
There's only one guy I want to ask you about. We can go on to World Cup rosters all we want, and we'll have plenty of time to do that. We got MLS playoffs, which I definitely want to ask you about. But there's one player I want to ask you about. Did Brad Davis go a long way towards punching his ticket to Brazil next summer with his performance last night?
No. But did he back up what I said in January in the Canada game? And everyone on my Twitter feed told me, Brad Davis will never be a factor for the United States. Jurgen Klinsmann warned me that when Brad Davis showed up in the January camp, he said he showed up fit and he has a better understanding of how to play defense than he thought he did watching him. And he was very, very surprised at how fit and smart Brad Davis is. I think Brad Davis has a legit shot of being that 22nd sprinter guy on the roster because of what he can do at the last 10, 15 minutes of a game.
Yeah.
Best left foot in MLS. Set pieces often turn games in tight games. And when the game slows down a bit, then I think Brad's maximum speed can play at the international level. I'm not writing Brad Davis off. I'm sorry. And
it's interesting, and I'm not putting yesterday's scenario that the U.S. was in with their situation in Azteca, but even though Brad Davis isn't an automatic call-up every time, especially during his World Cup qualifying campaign, when it's been crunch time and he's needed something, Klinsmann has gone to Brad Davis in two big spots.
Yeah, at Azteca, defensively.
Yes.
I mean, think of that, Greg. I just said defensively. They're tied 0-0. And Brad Davis comes off the bench. Now, he also had a silly foul, if you remember, that gave up a dangerous set piece to Mexico. So, obviously there's some things there. But when he came off, and I looked at Ian Dark and I said, Ian, that's Brad Davis coming off the bench to get a 0-0 draw. You don't see that often, and I think that's a credit to Brad Davis.
I can't tell you how excited I am about MLS. It's just this time of year with the league, it fills me with pride that this is my country's league, and looking at the scenarios, and we can talk about MLS scheduling and the schedulers all we want. This weekend, every game means something in MLS. It's awesome.
Yep, and it's about time. And I give credit to whoever did the schedule in New York, and it feels a collective effort, and everyone should pat themselves on the back, because for the first time since I've seen MLS really come down to where every single team is playing in a game that means something. That it's literally a head-to-head battle. You have some home and aways that end the season. You have great matchups. Every game means something for every team. Wednesday night, LA's playing Montreal. That starts it. Well done, MLS. They really hit the nail on the head on this one.
But here's my conundrum, and I don't know if you want to be mean about it or you want to take the polite way, but I look at the teams that are still alive, the teams that have realistic chances in both conferences to get into the playoffs, and I look at them and I go, there's really only one team that I think to myself of all the teams that I go, you know what? I don't know if I want to see them in the playoffs. There are other teams. There are going to be teams that are playing an exciting brand of soccer that are in good form that will not make the playoffs. So, Taylor, who do you want to see in or out on those bubble teams?
Well, right now, unfortunately, by the numbers, we have 10 bubble teams. So,
exactly.
I mean, to your point, though, I would actually say, listen, if you're going to try to convince me that someone's playing well right now and they're not in the playoffs, well, they should have won their games earlier then.
Agreed.
They should have got points. So to that point, my biggest problem with this year's version of MLS and these teams is there hasn't been a team that stepped forward and said, no, we're good. We're a legit team. New York's had a great season. Tim Cahill's been phenomenal. But are you really scared of New York? No. Portland's been great. How many ties have they had? L.A., who knows if they can defend a set piece? Sporting KC, it's not the same team that was of the regular season the past couple of years. So, Greg, to your point, there's just no one that stepped forward saying, you're going to have to go through us in order to get to the playoffs. So for us in the media, yeah, it's exciting and stuff, but I think for there's no David. There's no David
Yes.
and Goliath. You know, there's a lot of Davids, no Goliaths. It just doesn't fit this year where you kind of felt like over the past years, you know, there was two teams that you're like, oh, you're going to have to beat them in order to go to MLS Cup.
And that's the flip side of the parity argument. And when you have the naysayers come out, that's what they'll say. And I get that. But, you know, as you just said, that's what makes it exciting to sit down, or will be sit down and watch the matches this weekend, because you really can't look at any of these matches and go, okay, well, San Jose is going to Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a two-time winner. They're obviously going to roll. But you can't say that because that hasn't been the case this entire season.
No, but Greg, I think the naysayers say it because they want Real Madrid and
Yes.
Barcelona and everyone else. All I'm saying is I want a number one seed, like a Sporting KC over the last 2 years, where you're like, oh, boy, this team's good. And then Houston goes and beats them. That's still a good matchup. That's still you get what you deserve out of the regular season. I don't know who deserves anything out of this regular season. That's ultimately what my point is.
All right, so I'll give you three teams, actually four teams in the East and then four teams in the West. You tell me which of the teams you would be disappointed if they didn't make the playoffs because you want to see more of them. Montreal, Chicago, Philly, New England. Which one of those, or multiple teams, would you be disappointed if they didn't end up getting in?
Disappointed in Montreal because how well they started the season. It's been abysmal how they've limped to the finish line. And I'll be disappointed if New England doesn't get in. And not because it's my old club, but more so when you look at the wealth of young talent they have, and then you bring in a guy like Gonçalves, you know, that's one of those teams that you'd like to see and see how the young players do. Now, on a personal level, I want Chicago in because I said Mike McGee's MVP if they get in, and I said that in July. So I kind of need a couple brownie points on ESPN.
Well, and so, you know, I'm going to finish that thought of yours and say, okay, for you, Philadelphia Union is the team that's going to be left out or probably will be left. I don't want to say probably will be left out, but they're the team that has the least excitement going on that you would say, okay, I'm okay with them not making it.
I look at Philadelphia Union. I can't figure out a way how Jack McInerney scores 10 goals in his first 8 games, 1 in his last 14. They haven't looked the part. Chicago, I mean, all 4 teams haven't looked the part of a playoff team to the right sense. So that's unfair to the Union. You just asked me disappointment. Yeah, is anyone really disappointed if Philly's not in the playoffs with how their season's gone? Yeah. I don't know if there is.
Exactly. And so let's go to the West. It'll be Rapids, San Jose, Vancouver. Which of those teams would you be disappointed if you didn't see them get into the playoffs to see how they performed on that stage?
Colorado Rapids. I think Vancouver, with the wealth of talent they have, and with how Martin Rennie has handled the Darren Maddox situation and not playing them, whatever that is, you know what? For me, they don't deserve it. San Jose, they don't go away. You know, San Jose really doesn't go away. Wondolowski, even though he has only 10 goals, he leads MLS in game winners. But for me, it's Colorado. I think Oscar Pereira was dealt a tough deck of cards with the amount of injuries in the regular season at the beginning, and it allowed him to play Dylan Powers and Deshaun Brown, and it's turned out to be a great gem for him. And, you know, if they're in, he's the front runner for Coach of the Year, and I kind of like them. I kind of like how they just roll the dice and throw a bunch of speed and athleticism at you. I think it'd be disappointing. Now, in saying that, Greg, someone better show up at Dick's Sporting Goods Park for the game.
Well, and I feel like they've done well the last few weeks as far as their attendance is concerned. I feel like they're maybe turning some sort of corner. I don't know if it's a big corner, but I feel like they're finally getting a foothold.
It's fair enough. They are. And it's not a cheap shot by me. They have started to turn the corner. I just want to see it for longer than 5 or 6 games. But maybe they're turning the corner because they've actually got a pretty exciting team to go watch play.
You know, and I've had a soft spot, and we've argued about this team in the past, and you brought them up again. And I still feel like, and I know they've been inconsistent, and I know they should have done a better job with the talent they have. I still want to see the Whitecaps in the playoffs. I still love the way they play, and I feel like they're an exciting team. And getting Jay DeMerit, who's our next guest, he'll be on in a little bit, getting him in and getting him back up to speed with this last few weeks, if they're healthy going into the playoffs, they're going to be somebody to be contend with.
Yeah, and I just love how in a must-win game they play 4 defensive midfielders.
You're right. I can't argue with that. All right, so let me ask you as we wrap up, couple of teams at the top of the table. How much stock are we putting into the Sounders' current form, and how much do we attribute that to injuries, or is this just a team that just isn't going to gel by the end of the year?
No, it's hard for me to say they're not going to gel because when you looked at that run they went on in the middle of the year, they were virtually unbeatable, defensively very sound. It's been a predicament for Ziggy Schmidt because he's had attacking players always out of games. He hasn't had a consistent run with attacking players. And unfortunately, the way MLS season's set up and going into playoffs, 3-game losing streak, giving up 10 goals in 3 games. I mean, when you really look at it, this game against Dallas this weekend and then end of the year against LA, it's the only way they can right the ship. Now, obviously, injuries to Clint Dempsey, Eddie Johnson, Obafemi Martins are going to play a huge factor in this. So it's going to be very interesting to see, but they are a streaky team. And everyone that said, and I'm one that says last weekend against Portland was their biggest game. It was because you never want the form they have right now going into the playoffs. But let's say they go to Dallas this weekend and win 6-0 or something stupid. Who knows? A game like that can then right the ship pretty quickly.
It was a far off thought, but it was a situation where when they said MLS Cup was going to be in the home arena, that it would be a situation that if Portland ever got there, that would be something that would be a really, really, really big advantage. But it was always, well, they're not going to get there anytime soon. There's a good chance that we could have an MLS Cup in Portland. How big an advantage would that be for the Timbers?
It's one of the few places that has a home field advantage. And when obviously you have Seattle as well, but Portland, there's an advantage there. Every game there, Greg, I don't know why, because the dimensions don't really speak to it. It's just really a cluster. It's 100 miles an hour. There's always high emotion. You saw the Will Johnson, Osvaldo Alonso stuff. That happens every game. It's chippy. It's a weird type of game. It's a home field advantage for them. And they've got a goalkeeper that is absolutely standing on his head. It's Donovan Ricketts. And this team believes they have a shot of winning every single game out there and actually believes they should be winning. Caleb Porter's done a miraculous job.
Final thought, and it would be on the two teams that have faced off in MLS Cup the last 2 years, and two teams who you can discount at your own risk. You're going to be in Los Angeles this weekend for the ESPN game. It'll be Earthquakes versus LA Galaxy, and then I'm talking about Houston will host New York Red Bulls. To me, those are the two teams that you got to worry about because they're the ones lying in the weeds who when it comes crunch time, they're going to put out their best product, or they're battle tested and they will know how to win in these situations, whether they're in form or not in form.
Yeah, of course. And you know me, I love myself some LA Galaxy and Houston Dynamo, considering my, nightmares every night or, MLS Cups losing to those two teams. And then moving to ESPN and having a call 2 MLS Cups with those two teams. So to be quite honest with you, I would love 2 new teams in the MLS Cup. It'd be a breath of fresh air for me. But in all seriousness, are you going to bet against the Houston Dynamo and Dominic Kinnear? Are you going to bet against Bruce Arena and Dave Sarakin having his team ready and Landon Donovan being fit enough and Omar Gonzalez turning it up? And then you add a Robbie Keaton to that equation? In saying all of that, though, they will miss Mike McGee. I don't care what anyone tries to convince me. Mike McGee was always the X factor. He was never counted upon. He could score goals. He was always that unmarked guy. They're going to miss him, I feel, this playoffs.
How close are you following the Terps these days?
I always follow.
Okay, so, my obligatory DC United question, sitting on the number 1 pick. Patrick Mullins, the real deal, or maybe somebody? It's not the clear-cut number one choice for you. Just him personally. I'm not asking you to evaluate other players.
I'm not sure he's a clear number one, to be quite honest. Not sure on that yet. And I think there's some good players. I think Steve Newman at Georgetown had a really good postseason last year and kind of opened up some eyes. It'd be interesting what he does this year. But I think with regards to DC United, Greg, what do they need? They need everything. And I don't know, where are they going to play Perry Kitchen next year? It's a big question.
Well, wait. Why would that be? To me, the long list of questions for DC United, where would you play Perry Kitchen, is not even on the list. Why would you say that?
Because what if you play him at center back? Then you need a defensive center midfielder. What if you don't play him at center back and you play him at center defensive midfielder? They need a center back. So, I mean, you're going to tell me they need a center back?
Okay. I mean, if you're going
to they don't need a center back. You're telling me that right now.
I'm telling you that. But if you're telling me that Perry Kitchen's position is something that I need to worry about, then I need to do a lot more worrying than I was doing, and I was doing a lot of worrying, Taylor.
No. What I'm saying to you is, if you're going to say I'm playing Perry Kitchen at center back, oh, good. Well, now I got to go find defensive center midfielder. It's very easy to me with DC United. Is I think you do pick the best player available, but when you have the number one pick and then salary caps come into the equation, do you get you don't know if you get a for sure starter as that number one pick. Who knows? Unless a trade comes around. And I think DC United can make some serious moves this offseason and improve in that roster. And I think Ben Olsen, his experience in understanding the value of that number one pick and maybe what he can get for it, I'm not told they use it. I think we got a long way to go there, but DC United needs everything.
California Classico, probably the most underrated rivalry in MLS. Would you agree, Taylor?
Are we talking? Wait, hold on. Are we talking Chivas LA, or are we talking
No. I'm sorry. I could see how you misunderstand. That's the Super Classico, Taylor.
Yeah, I think we need to rename that to like Super Classico or something like that.
No, this is the real derby game for LA Galaxy, right?
Yeah, and you know what's amazing about it is that San Jose is still right in the thick of it.
Yep.
And I've been part of many teams where you go into the playoffs riding a hot hand, and all you ask for is to control your own destiny. San Jose's looking at that. They're looking at it saying, all right, good. We've got LA, big game, and every time they meet, something crazy happens, and they can play an ugly game. They can make you play an ugly game, which is a key component. It's amazing that San Jose, LA on October 20th is actually a big game still, because when that schedule came out, my money was on San Jose being out.
Yep. And two teams with a lot to play for. They have two teams that don't like each other and two teams that will go at it at StubHub Center on Sunday. It'll be San Jose versus LA Galaxy. Taylor Twellman will be there as well for ESPN. And we thank you for joining us on Pitch Pass. Always a pleasure, Taylor.
Yep, always a blast, man. Be good.
How awesome is Taylor? I mean, seriously. And if you don't follow him on Twitter, you are missing out on MLS, on U.S. men's national team, and also on some funniness as well. At Taylor Twellman to follow him on Twitter. Well, we discussed our second guest team, so I figured let's get him in and really get into one of the more interesting playoff pushes in MLS. And that's saying something because we have so many, as we just touched on. But Vancouver Whitecaps, I told you, they got a special place in my heart, a little soft spot for Vancouver Whitecaps, and they are in a very interesting situation. So we'll discuss that with their captain. Jay DeMerit joins us right now. Jay, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm not as busy as you are. You're like a Hollywood star with a big blockbuster for the holiday season coming out on a press junket.
I wish.
How is it, though, that you end up with all of these bookings for these interviews that you have back to back to back?
Oh, well, like I said, I like to talk, and, somebody's got to be the voice of the club, so I'm happy to be that guy.
Well, we just had Taylor Twellman on the show, and we started with him with the CONCACAF stuff. So I would love to get your reaction to everything that happened Tuesday, especially as a guy who's been in that situation and probably hopes to be in that situation again. What was it like for you to be sitting and watching it? Where were you, and how was your watching experience as that all unfolded?
Oh, well, actually, I was away, so I was following it all on Twitter, which is actually pretty fun because you can get all the media outlets at once.
Totally, and it's like you're watching it, yet you don't really have to watch it.
Exactly. And you can just wait for the big, because everyone posts capital letters when there's goals and things like that. So you're just scrolling through, and it was crazy because I'm thinking to myself, going, if Mexico doesn't qualify here, that's a huge thing. They start rioting in Mexico City. This is dangerous stuff here.
Yeah. And
then all of a sudden to see Graham come up and get that goal, it was just incredible. And again, it shows not only how tight it is now in CONCACAF. There's no more gimmies anymore, as everyone now knows. But it also, on a personal note, to see the U.S. continue to keep to that standard. That's an easy game to just go, you know what? We've qualified. Let's just pack it in and we'll play some subs, and those guys can just do what they want, and we'll see who comes all right at the end. But the resolve and the character that these guys keep showing is a major credit to the players that are doing this work for the U.S.
It might be hard for you to answer this question, but do you watch it differently as a guy who has been in that situation before?
I think so. I think anyone that's been in the trenches watches it differently because they know what's being said in the locker room. They know what it feels like, say, to walk into the locker room in that scenario. It's all those types of things where you try to just know on the inside what goes on, and you can feel for these guys. And, in a way that makes it more enjoyable. But in a way it makes it more stressful because you know what they're going through.
Yeah, and you really can't do anything about it because you're not there helping out.
No, exactly. So you just got to sit and wait like everyone else, which is actually not hard being a fan sometimes. But I actually quite enjoy it.
Well, I'll ask you, and you're on your Twitter, your bio, it kind of answers the question. You're still, you haven't announced an international retirement, so you're still holding out hope that something happens and you get called in.
Oh well, I'm also a realist. I should also put in my bio, but. At the same time, as you're an active player, you always push to be a part of your national team because that means you're doing your job. And, for me, again, when I play well for the Vancouver Whitecaps, I'm on the national team radar. That's the way it works, and that's the way it will always be. And that's great. Now I'm back playing, and you never know. I've seen crazier things happen. So you keep working hard, you do your job, and you enjoy your job. And I'm definitely thankfully back doing that now.
Where is the Cascadia Cup at this exact moment?
I think it's at one of the south side of our fan group's houses or something. It's the fans trophy, so I believe they take it. But it's a little bit eerie when you win a trophy and none of your team is there.
Yeah, that's what. So have you had your hands on it?
No, we have yet to see it. But I would guess that our next home game we'll do a little presentation for the fans and make sure we do the proper celebration. Because it's a big thing here. Up in the Pacific Northwest. Fans especially put a huge onus on that throughout the season because that's bragging rights, and there's nothing better from a fan than bragging rights. So that's the number one thing. But also in a very tough division up in the West, to be Cascadia Cup champions with Seattle and Portland, who are very good teams, is a feather in our cap as players and as a team confidence for the season. So, these are goals we set early on and say let's do our job and win the Cascadia Cup. And thankfully this year we were able to do that after two pretty embarrassing years, the last two. So, again, it shows the improvement that we're continuing to show at this club, and I'm just happy for the guys that have worked hard this season to achieve that.
You've been back on the pitch for about a month now. I got to ask you, how did you get back so quickly? I'm a Philadelphia boy by birth, so my favorite baseball team is the Phillies. Ryan Howard, it's been 2 years, and he's still struggling to get back. And you do a lot more running than a first baseman on a baseball team. So how'd you get back so quickly?
Oh, well, that's fine. Well, PEDs is not the answer.
No trips to Germany for blood transfusions?
Yeah, no, I didn't do that either. Well, Kobe went and did that, and he's not back yet either. So, there must be something in the water up here. But literally speaking, now that I actually just said that, I contribute a lot of it to a new medical facility up here where there's an underwater treadmill. I'm sure there's quite a few around professional clubs, but for me, especially in relation to that injury, it really helped me. Not only was I able to do a lot of fitness work and keep my fitness high, but when you're underwater and you're running, there's a lot of pressure off those joints, especially of the Achilles tendon, which is needed so much when you run. So I think that really helped bridge the gap for when I started back on land training about 3.5 months in. I was already, having thousands of reps underwater and not losing, my form and things like that you lose when you're walking with a limp or doing land training with a limp and carrying your injury. So I think the first thing is don't try to ever carry an injury.
Yeah.
And number two, use all the facilities around you. We have great medical staff up here in Vancouver. We have a great facility with everything we need. And then the third thing is push yourself. I was doing double days for 3 months. I was doing with the team manual work in the morning and then on the treadmill at a different facility in the afternoons. And just pushing it, knowing yourself and your body and knowing what hurts and what pain is actually just pain that you have to go through to get healthy again, I think is key. And I've been around long enough to know the difference of those two for the most part. So I think it was both those combinations of pushing it myself and knowing my body and knowing my will to want to get back, and then also using the great facilities and the people that we have around us.
And you could have credited also your wife, who probably could have given you tips on how to come back and rehabilitate from big injuries. You chose not to do that, Jay. That was very nice of you not to do that.
That's right. Yeah, but she always, but you're totally right. I think I missed that out after. I think she's had 9 major surgeries, so I'm way behind her. Yeah,
she knows how to get back. She could have given you some tips if only you had asked her.
Exactly.
Well, because you've got an interesting, and I'm talking about the Whitecaps have an interesting last 2 matches. But before I get into that, I got to tell you, and speaking with you, your Canadian accent is there, Jay. It's there.
Have you already forgotten that I'm from Wisconsin?
I know it, but I feel like the Canadian accent, and I know the Wisconsin accent, the Minnesota accent is similar, but it's a little bit Canadian now.
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit of a chameleon to my surroundings, so you could be right there. But there's no better way to fit into your culture than to speak like that.
Totally
so
true.
Maybe that's right.
Did you pick up any of the British accent a la Friedel when you were there?
I did. I wasn't calling them the lads and things like that, but. I definitely had some words for sure. All
right, I'm about to, as we segue, I want to lay one on you. Are you relishing this home and home with Colorado to wrap up the season? You like that relishing? I dropped that right in there.
Yeah, I like that. And you know what? I think, over a long season, you always ask at the end of it all to have a chance. And, I think with our season, the ups and downs that we've had, to still have a chance is the first step. And now over the past couple games, I think we're starting to really get our belief back and starting to play well as a team, and guys are doing their jobs and taking care of their own individual responsibilities. And to come into this game and again, to have a chance and against a team like Colorado, who we've played well against before. We've had one game where we, obviously earlier this season we didn't play that well, but last year we played very well against them. So we know them well enough that if we do our jobs, we have that chance. And I think, it's important for us to manage the game right. People say that altitude isn't a factor sometimes, but it definitely is if you use it as a factor. If you come out of the gates and it's a track meet and the game's really open, then sometimes, we're going to get tired. So, it's about managing those types of things properly. It's about managing what the voice inside your head as far as, managing these performances and the pressure that comes along with them. But, again, the last couple of weeks, we've had those scenarios in front of us and we've been able to achieve what we wanted to, and that was the right result. And, I think, again, we can't get ahead of ourselves. We still got to go to a hard place to play and win. And that's always going to be pretty tough. But we've done it in the past couple of weeks, most importantly last week against Seattle. So we can definitely do that again. We just got to believe that we can.
And then the unusual part, the exciting part, the interesting part from an observer is that it's a long MLS season, yet it's come down to a home and home. And I know everything isn't tied into the 2 teams in this match, but it's almost come down to these 2 teams playing a home and home to decide who's going into the playoffs. And you don't see that in MLS, but you do see a lot in Europe, especially Europa League, Champions League. You specifically, I assume Nigel Reo-Coker has been in a situation as before where you've got this home and home 2-legged tie, if you will. What have you told the rest of the guys is how to approach a situation like this?
Well, yeah, I think the good thing, like you just touched on, is that we have a lot of guys in our dressing room that have been in these situations. Andy O'Brien, Nigel, these types of characters, Joe Cannon. All these types of guys are crucial in how you prepare for games and making sure guys are prepared in the right ways in their own heads. Secondly, I think you just have to take them one game at a time. You have to get excited by the occasion and not get stressed by the occasion. I think that's the main key, is trying to convince people that, don't let the pressure dictate how we are doing things. These are the type of situations that as a player you look for and you want to have, because this is what being a professional athlete is all about. And it's about relishing those challenges and making sure you're excited about them and not getting stressed out or getting overwhelmed by them. And I think, that's got to be the message across the board.
And then part two of that is this almost is, and I know you don't want to get ahead of yourself, but it almost is a dry run to what happens next if everything goes according to plan, which is the MLS Cup playoffs, where it is home and homes throughout the rest of the journey.
Very much so, and the good thing about, us making the playoffs last year was that thankfully now we have that experience in us. And we know that we almost beat the eventual champions handily in their home ground. So we almost did it last year. And now hopefully if we get there again, we can learn from that and do it again this year. So, again, experience only speaks for itself. And we got to make sure that the experienced guys use their experience and the new guys learn from these experiences. And hopefully we can get a bit of both.
So before I let you go, I have to ask you a very urgent question that I think only you can answer for me, at least MLS, and that is this weekend I have Cleveland's defense going against the Packers. Is that a good play?
Well, it's at Lambeau, isn't it?
I believe it is in Green Bay, yes.
That's probably not a very good idea.
You think so? I mean, even with all the injuries, you lost Randall Cobb now for 2 months. I just feel like that Cleveland defense could surprise some people against the Packers.
Well, I think so. I still think it's a risky pick, but we've been a little bit inconsistent this year, but we haven't been inconsistent at home. If it wasn't at home, I think you could be onto something. But Packers at the home are pretty hard to beat.
All right, I'll keep looking at the waiver wire. I feel like that's what you were saying between the lines.
Yes.
Jay DeMerit, thank you very much. Good luck the next 2 weekends against Colorado Rapids.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Pitch Pass.
This is your voice. This is my red, white, and blue. This is my anthem to you.
For more show information, go to pitchpass.com.